All right.
Hey.
Trying to pull up the slide again just in case that's helpful for us.
Yeah, my vision for education is probably not going to be entirely practical or realistic. It's going to be very utopian.
Well, you never know. Go ahead and go for it.
Let's hear it.
I mean, for a start, I would like class sizes to be much smaller, so that the teacher to student ratio is better. I've taught all the way from, just like you can count on one hand number of students in a class, all the way to the maximum number I ever taught was 56 in a classroom. No assistant at all, by the way. I was chucked into a public school classroom here when I got to Vietnam. And there were no materials, by the way. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So I've seen the full range of classroom sizes. Mostly it's been mid-30s. At this school, it's much nicer. I've got no classes at the moment that are above 15 students, which is one of the magic numbers, I believe. If we go back to Hattie's from memory, the lower number is great. And when it goes even further, when you have something like 8 students, you get to know them so well, their strengths and weaknesses. It also helps that because there's one of my students who needs assistance in that class of mine, I also follow them to some other subjects, and I get to see them learning in a variety of subjects and support them in those as well. So my depth of knowledge of those kids, who they are and what their weaknesses are, what they need assistance with, is just, it'd be impossible if it was not for this particular circumstance I'm in with the low class size. But I think something even more fundamental that I would like to sort of change, and again, feasibility is another issue, but I would like it to be more student directed and more sort of project based. And so rather than, just saying like, here's maths class, here's physics class, here's chemistry class, and so on, what's something that you would like to do? Maybe you would like to make something. Maybe you would like to create something, it's like, let's work out what that goal is. The kids have got to have goals. And then it's like, well, what are the skills or knowledge you might need to achieve that? And then working through that towards their goal. There was when I was going through school, I went to what they call a Waldorf school, actually, Rudolf Steiner school. And that was a little bit different from most schools. And they had projects. It wasn't the core and sort of the way I'm envisioning, but I remember there was one boy in high school who wanted to make a sword. And so suddenly he needs to learn something about the physics and the chemistry. He needs to learn about alloys. All of these things were attached to that. And so that was able to drive his learning of a whole bunch of stuff. And so, I don't know, this is just something that I think would be more engaging for the kids. If it's like, you want to develop a video game, well, you're going to have to learn all about computer hardware and software, and then maybe there's some psychology involved in terms of trying to make the game compelling. There's, language skills in terms of writing the dialogue for your game. But again, it's sort of a utopian vision, but if it was project-based like this and student-led, I think that would be wonderful. At least I wish that was how I was educated entirely.
Yeah.
I think that sounds amazing. I definitely feel like especially teenage, trying to like put myself in, gen ed high school or something like that, of where kids want to be and how they want to learn and what motivates them. I really like the idea of the student-led ideas and projects that I learned by doing. Someone could tell me until they're blue in the face and until I've heard it a million times and I could literally recite it by memory, but that does not mean that I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I learn by doing, even with directions. Like I could follow my maps on my phone every single day, but I won't actually know how to get to that place until, yes, after repetition, I will get it. but like going somewhere that is really complicated, that I really have to like look around and make myself do it. Okay, turn left at this street, turn right at this street, and not rely on something else to be telling me what to do. I have to, you know, it has to be in context. And that is how I learn. It has to be in context. I have a really difficult time learning out of context. And I imagine that I'm not the only one. And especially with our kids being so motivated by technology and other things that are maybe outside of us. Like sometimes my 15-year-old talks about things that I'm like, how I didn't even, that's been popular for 5 years. I didn't even explain this to me. Please tell me about this thing that you guys are all doing. Because, and so sometimes it's easy for us to be like, meh, no, that's not how we learn this. We learn it this way. That's not appropriate for school. We're going to do this instead. But I think that building projects and hands-on learning where you have to, I love that idea of picking something and then finding out, doing the research on it. What skills do you need? What materials do you need? How do you learn those things? And watching a YouTube video and learning how to do something, I mean, I think that is it's a way that we're learning nowadays that seeps in and that retains and that stays with us, that I mean, we're not really seeing in the classroom.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think of myself back in high school. Now, look, I was an incredible nerd. And I used to be on, maybe before your time, Usenet news groups on the internet, before they really had forums. And I love my sci-fi. And I came across, when I was about 15, I came across a discussion board on the Usenet, Star Trek versus Star Wars. And it was full of people, including literal rocket scientists, engineers, everything, who were debating based on what we can see here. That explosion, if we assume when the people were on the planet, they were walking around normally. So we can assume that it's one Earth gravity. So if we assume the range of a planet's size to have that gravity, the planet's probably this size. And so we now know the size of the planet. We saw the explosion on the surface of the planet. We can scale the pixels on that and work out what the blast radius of this explosion was. And then we can use a formula to calculate the explosive yield of the weapon used. And then we compare that and say, you know, the Enterprise would blow up a Star Destroyer. But physics, mathematics, all kinds of things, as well as debating skill. I learned far more participating in those debates than I did in my physics class.
Absolutely. And that's something that gets kids talking. Like I can see that conversation happening right now. And it's, you know, being motivated to discuss something, to use their brain.
You get the intrinsic motivation, right? Because extrinsic motivation is just so much inferior to that. Do this or I'll give you a bad grade and call your parents.
Especially with, I mean, teens and preteens, I mean, come on, it's not easy to be motivated, especially nowadays. I feel after COVID, it has been even worse with the instant gratification and, you know, just not being motivated. They lost a lot of that activity, and that
this vision would require such a higher teacher to student ratio. If I think I've got my grade 8 class here of 8 kids, I've got to try and work out what is an appropriate project for them and guide them through this. I can't do that with 30 kids. Like, we would need to recruit a massively higher number of teachers for this. So again, that's why it's a utopian vision. But
yes. So one more thing I have is my so those are a couple of ideas of older and gen ed. I have a few ideas of ideally what I would love as far as integration goes. I'm in the school that is integrated, and I feel like it is integrated in name, and I have to send kids to go check in and sit and do nothing and not participate, and have the kids still look at them and still there. And I would love a more inclusive integration system of back and forth. I would love to have gen ed kids come into my classroom and see what my kids do and be familiar in their environment and work with these kids in a way that they are familiar and comfortable. Because my kids go into these classrooms and they're uncomfortable. They're in an uncomfortable situation, and socialization is not happening because they don't know what to do. And even assisted and guided, it's still, I would love it to be more fluid, and to where, you know, gen ed and special ed kids just go to PE together and sit at lunch together, and that there are certain, you know, more programs and integration, that maybe classrooms being paired together, like classrooms connected, and a special ed class on one side and a gen ed 5th grade on the other side, and be able to, okay, go next door, oh, you go next door, and be having kids be learning next to each other in the same environment, learning different skills, but relatively similar. It would definitely require smaller classes, more teachers, more aides.
And
You know.
coordination across the 2 teachers.
Yes, it's definitely a rainbow world. It's but you know, if I had millions of dollars and could set up a private school, it would be more integrated.
I'm gonna, oh, sorry, are you still going? Keep going.
Nope, you go.
Okay, I was gonna say, because this isn't necessarily part of what I had thought about originally, but since you were talking about it, I want to piggyback on it, because I am in a fully integrated school. Like, we don't have, we have study skills classes, but again, those study skills classes are not just SPED. There are also students who are part of gen ed who are struggling and need extra support. And one of the things that I found is that it's like this amazingly wonderful idea when it's an idea, but in the actual day-to-day practices, no public school is going to have the amount of resources that it needs to support the kids in a positive way. And it kind of goes back to like needing more people and all of that. And like I think you guys missed it, but I don't even have like a life skills program or any of that because of the special autism program at my school. But one of the things that I really run into that has made me not a fan of it is that, like, you were talking about how you send your kids to class and they still get looked at funny, and they still, is like, we've had these integration practices and we're sending students that, if we're being honest, most adults look at and are like, I don't know what to do here. And then we're just placing them in a classroom with 30, and me at middle school, of like the meanest age kids you are ever going to meet.
Like, right?
And we're not doing any sort of awareness. We're not teaching any of those kids what autism is. We're not teaching them about learning differences. And so we're not giving the emotional skills that create safe spaces for my kids from the SPED program. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, also, I have some students who could potentially actually be physically dangerous to other students in the classroom. And it now becomes the opposite, where if they get triggered in a weird way and there's not an EA there, and this has happened in the past, we now have a kid getting attacked by a different kid, because again, it was part of an autism thing, and the kid gets very worked up and lashes out. But for me, integration with the proper amounts of supports would be the like wonderful, amazing utopia.
It's like we're supporting only one side of it, right? We try and prepare the special ed kid to go in there, but we're not actually doing anything with the general ed kids to prepare them for the special ed kid.
Yes.
And you know, so many of my special, like when I talk to my kids, almost across the board, the majority of my kids hate it. They do not want to be in a normal classroom. They feel like outsiders. They feel weird. They don't feel welcome in. When they are having elevated situations, they feel extra pressure in that, because now they're being stared at by 30 people, versus when we're in like, so one of my kids is one of those who gets really, really elevated, gets somewhat physically violent towards himself, not others. but he'll start like smacking his head against the wall or hitting himself.
That's going to
or
scare other people,
like,
even if he's not hurting them.
and yeah, and so like we have to go into a separate room because that's something that happens on a daily occurrence. And when it does happen, it like does not help him make any friends because now everybody sees that and goes, ooh, that, like, rightly so. And he's also super obsessed with horror movies, and so he'll just like say
What's he
things,
watching
like,
horror movies for?
yeah, I know.
I have
That's, like,
way
part
too
of-
many kids that watch them also.
Yeah.
Seriously? That is too scary for me
Yeah.
to watch. No, thank you. You're
But
12.
he'll like say stuff where he, like, the very first day that I worked with him, he got an answer wrong and he freaked out and he was like, this makes me want to peel someone's flesh from their face. When I kid you not, 30 kids all like, ooh, like, who just said that? And it was like automatically, and he's like looking at me like, why is everybody looking at me? And I'm like,
Like,
"Ooh."
that's a normal response.
Yeah.
That's being like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm so
and-
mad.
yeah, and so you have like those situations. So, and that's actually one of the things that bleeds into one of my other parts of schooling that I wish we could change is I wish schooling wasn't necessarily just based on subjects. I wish we also assessed students on being good community members. So why are we not, like, in whatever way we can, be shaping that as well? So it's like, yeah, you should be getting hopefully an A in whatever subject you want to get an A in. But like, if you're flunking how to be a good community member, like, that's a bigger
How to be a
problem
good
than anything.
friend. How to
Yeah. And that's like social skills,
regulation and self-regulation, how to regulate your own emotions and your own responses. All of these things should be taught.
Oh, absolutely. And that's
do.
why I wish we could have a human relationships and personal growth class,
Mm.
and have that be part of it. Because like, so, and part of it is, look, technology is not going away, that's staying. But one of the issues with technology, except especially from a young age, is that kids are having all of these online interactions, and it's the same thing with adults, and then they get into real human interactions and they're like, I don't know what to do, or I'm behaving in ways that are completely inappropriate, because, and especially with COVID being away from a lot of other people, they haven't learned all of that. So I think that's the thing. I also agree. I wish we had more hands-on learning with applicability to life and things that they're interested in. I just put more movement and fun in classrooms, generally speaking.
Like
'Cause
my school, we've got a lot of land, and I've put it to some teachers, you know, like biology and so forth. It's like, well, can we make a garden? Like,
Mm,
what? Yeah, why not? Right? Like, this is going to be
Yeah.
hands-on, direct. You know, we can run experiments in various ways in terms of how we treat different plants. There's so many different ways that we could use that. And then, wouldn't it be nice if one day we harvest some of the potatoes and make potato chips, and the kids get to eat those for lunch? And we made these. You
Yeah.
know, it's
and like, that's so cool and interesting, and also applicable to like real life. And
exactly.
also, I look at like one of the big things is like, human beings biologically, we're not supposed to sit in one place. Like, we're not built for that. We're not built for sitting in a chair for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
And then we're taking the most energy filled versions of human beings and being like, sit in a chair for 8 hours a day. And I think that's, if we can incorporate, like, the classrooms that I'm in that are the most successful tend to incorporate a lot of movement in their learning. And it helps with the wiggles, but it also helps with thinking. And then one of my things too, and I don't know how to, like, I don't have an answer for this, but I feel like we just need to get rid of grades altogether and figure out a different way of assessing. Because one thing that I've learned through my students is nobody cares about learning the information. They care if they're getting an A. And the minute they get their A, gone. So like, that's a thing where I wish we could figure out a way to assess like long-term knowledge acquisition, and not just like, did I get an A+ on my test? And
Yeah, test them on like fundamental understanding.
yeah,
Like comprehensive understanding. Like, do you have your whole mind wrapped around this situation or this subject, or are you just answering the questions that you're just trying to get an A?
and because that I do, and I have a ton of students, both gen ed and, because I'm in gen ed classroom, so I'll have a bunch of kids come up and be like, do you think this is worth a 4? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, but can you tell me anything that's on that piece of paper now that you've like written it down? And like they're just so focused on getting an A because their parents expect A's, but like there's no actual care to like what we're learning or why it's important. Or
I can remember
life
I
lessons.
would come out of an exam, I'd crammed for this thing. I went in there, poured out all of my knowledge, and then I went out and someone asked me like, so what was on the exam? And I'm like, I can't even remember anything that I just did. I just finished the exam 15 minutes ago and it's all just gone.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's, I think I hit on all that. Oh, my last one. And this is not necessarily a hot take, especially in my district, but we need to get, like, if you are at a school where kids are given just like unrestricted to access to iPads, it's absolutely terrible. It's horrible for them, like across the board. It's like that whole immediate reward system. They can barely sit and even listen for like 4 minutes without checking it and looking at it. And at my school, it used to be 3rd grade, but with COVID, essentially you enter kindergarten and it's like,
Yeah.
Here's your online addiction machine, have fun. And we actually are struggling with like around this age group is when we start noticing actual media addiction issues. So I have like multiple kids who we are now trying to work with iPad addiction tendencies. And it's the same thing as like normal addiction. When you try to get them off of it, they cry, they lash out, they break down. And it's like that just being from like, hey, can you close your iPad for 5 minutes while we talk about this? And it's tears and it's breakdown. And it's like, it's really, really not great.
I agree.
So my thing would be like technology
That, like,
for certain things, but like just not
is that access to the iPads for educational use, or are they able to
like
access
at my
whatever they
school,
want on the
they can
iPads?
bring any device, whether it's a laptop or an iPad, whatever, they bring it from home, and they have it with them all day, and they can use it in any break time. But also, most teachers use that device throughout the whole lesson just by default. Many of them say, as soon as you get in my class, open up your Google Classroom and start doing a warm-up activity or whatever. But then the teacher's not able to, and often not seemingly inclined to, really monitor what they're actually doing. And so when I'm pushing into classes, I'm usually seated in a way that I can see things the teacher can't, because they're more up the front. And I'm looking across at these screens, and there's a Discord chat, here's Tetris going on, and they're just doing whatever the hell they want, and they're distracting each other, and they're cheating with each other, sharing answers through their chats and so forth. And it's chaos.
Watching Netflix, doing all sorts of, like I said, I have a 15-year-old and I get all the dirt and get told all the things. And she has a whole system that they do with their Chromebooks of, with their headphones in and able to, listen to the lecture and, put on her Netflix and all the things. I'm like, whoa, now what are you doing? What's happening?
Right.
And the teachers don't walk by, they don't monitor, and they don't care because she gets straight A's.
Yeah.
So like, I guess my ideal school, we would have a uniform device that is provided by the school, that is controllable by the teacher. Mm-hmm. And from my desk, I should be able to like black the screens. Yeah. I want attention now, right? It's like,
and that would be amazing.
Here, right? Yes.
That would be so cool.
Or if you had the device where you legitimately like only had access to the things that the teacher was posting.
Exactly.
So like, yes, I need you to be able to access NASA's website because we're looking at like moon stuff.
I should be able to push something to their screen, and that be the only thing they're allowed to look at when I do that.
Yeah, but that's my big thing is like, I think technology can be so amazing on so many different levels, but man, if it's just like not regulated, I think
slippery slope.
Yeah, really slippery.
Yes. I touching on that, I have a student right now that we are struggling with the addiction, and we have iPads in my class, and we have communication devices that are iPads, and we have a lot of materials and things that we access through the iPads, but there's also, like earned free choice. I have all my kids are on a token system. All of my kids earn breaks and earn free time and earn things. And I have this one student that all he wants is iPad time. And it was great when he was working so hard to earn the iPad. But now that's all he ever wants. He won't play Legos anymore. He won't do puzzles anymore. He won't, and now it's affecting his socialization to where he would, and this child has autism, but his social skills are like declining. He's regressing in his social communication ability because he goes home and gets on his Switch and stays on his Switch like all day. And at school, all he wants is that, so that's all he's motivated by. And then if there's anything that disrupts that, it is a huge breakdown. And so we've had to basically eliminate technology access in my classroom altogether. And he's allowed to access technology, free choice, for 5 minutes plus 2 more minutes at 2 times of the day only. And otherwise, we call it technology free choice, and that is what you're allowed to choose. And it has definitely helped with his socialization. We've implemented another part because he is so curious, and I hate to tamper on the curiosity and the using technology in a responsible way and in an informative way. And so we've now implemented that when he's done with his work, if my staff that is working with him is allowed to access the iPad for him to look things up. So, and this kid is interested of black holes, the Black Bear Diner, the Build-A-Bear Workshop, whirlpools, planets, dwarf planets. I mean, all these things. Every day is something different that he wants to know about. Well, why do they do that? How? And so this, we've been implementing this for the last month, and it has really helped him grow in that socialization. And so he's able to use it educationally and like, okay, what do you want to look up? All right, let's talk about this. And then, and then that always sparks a different conversation. Oh, well, now look that up. What do they say about that? And the dwarf planets. And then I had to go to all the names of the dwarf planets. And then he wanted to know if they had ice on that planet, or if they had air on that planet or that moon. And these are amazing.
That's right. If he could have a project based on, learning about the solar system and the stars.
I'm fighting on pushing him into gen ed because he's actually one that the parents don't want him to push into integration, and he needs it. And he's ready for that level of classroom participation a little bit, and he's socially appropriate enough to where I think he can make general education friends and do all those things. So he started pushing in a little bit, but I'm really fighting that pushback with the parents on it.
So my case study, Niles, one of the issues that he's got is, well, firstly, any free time he's on his device, and it's either a game or it's a cartoon. And one of the problems is I really see him struggling with like how he can express himself appropriately and get what he wants through his interactions, but he's modeling himself on literal two-dimensional characters. And so, if he's not done his homework or something, the way that he will deal with that with the teacher, he's modeling himself on an over-the-top character. He'll say, "Oh, teacher, I'm so sorry. I forgot to do my homework. Please, I'm begging you for mercy." And it's like this overacting kind of thing. And I don't have enough time with him outside of all the push-ins that I do with him, but I want to help him to try and work out what a more appropriate response is. And I've even modeled for him. And I said, look, Niles, let's say I want to apologize for you. I might say, "Hey, Niles, I'm really sorry. I never meant to hurt you," right? Now, notice I'm not loud, right? I'm not like there's not anguish in my voice exactly, but see how that was more subdued, and people will take that as more genuine. But then I said, if I go, "Oh, Miles, I'm so sorry," like people don't think that's genuine, right? That seems strange to them. And I saw him clicking a little bit the other day when I modeled these for him. But it's like there's a lot of work that he needs, and I don't have time to do that work with him.
I wonder if there is a resource out there Because like I've talked about social stories and things like that, and I know they do have social stories for older kids, but I wonder if there's like, wouldn't that be amazing if there was a cartoon that was like
Yeah.
a socially appropriate cartoon that's like
Yes.
super engaging, but teaches them all these appropriate skills that regular
and compare and
entertainment-only
contrast
cartoons
good
and
interactions with
things
bad
do not-
interactions.
Yes, because I mean, my daughter went through that when she was younger, with being a character on TV, and there was, you know, over the top reactions. Everything is and oh my gosh, and everything is huge and big. I mean, and I'm kind of a cartoon. We are huge and big. I'm very animated with my students. I'm an animated person. That's why I chose this career.
Yeah, no,
but
likewise.
Are things that are appropriate for the classroom and not appropriate for the classroom and whatnot. I wonder if there is a resource out there available.
One of the things that I've seen they do, at least in some parts of the US and some schools, and it's usually more preparation for college, you know, like graduating and so forth, but you could do it with a bit younger because he's grade 7, is doing role plays and actually filming the role plays and then analyzing those together. And so we'll create realistic scenarios, right? You need to ask your teacher for an extension on something, whatever else it is. And I'll play the teacher and you're going to ask me, and we film it and we analyze it and we work out, like, see how that was a little bit too much, or you were too loud there, or whatever else. And they use this to help, you know, socialize them properly for life beyond school. Again, the problem though is, like, when would I do that? Like, do I have to hold him after school or to try and work out with but anyway, but technology has a role in that, because he's always just in a cartoon world whenever he's not in the classroom, or sometimes in the classroom.
Yeah.
Okay, I think, are we good?
I think so.
I think so.
Right. And then some, like always.
Yep.
Right. See you guys next week, right? We don't have to get together again.
No, I don't think that we have any homework assignments that require us to do a meet. So are you still with us then? Have you heard anything back on that, Christina?
Oh, yeah, you missed it. I am still with you guys. Eddie was able to talk to them and figure it out, because he was like, I don't really feel like that should be happening. So
do you get to continue with us the whole time for the credential program then? Nice.
Unless I get another random email in my box. Because I thought I was like here after the first class, I was like, cool, this is my new group, my new people. And then I got that email and I was like, oh, I guess not. But yeah, so hopefully I shall be staying, which would be nice.
Good. All right. I'll see you guys on Wednesday.
All right, see you Wednesday.